He presented the envelope to me while we were eating breakfast. Utterly without notice or clarification. He just moved it along the countertop near my coffee mug as if handing over the sugar bowl. "A short holiday," he stated. "You've appeared wound up recently." My gaze fell upon the emblem featured prominently. It belonged to some secluded coastal spa facility. I recognized it from advertisements, depictions of pale fabrics and murmuring water features. He took a sip of his espresso, then added, "Bring a companion. Treat yourself." I gave a nod, offered a smile, expressed my thanks, yet the tightness deep in my stomach persisted. It always did these days. Unaffected by his grand gestures, or even his physical contact. What little contact remained. We were okay. Consistently okay. No shouting matches, no doors slammed shut, only stillness. A persistent quietness that had, through the passing years, grown dense, resembling fog, gentle yet stifling. Later, while standing inside the walk-in wardrobe, I observed my reflection. My dressing gown was untied, and I angled my head, studying my exposed collarbone, the paleness of my upper legs. I wasn't dissatisfied with my appearance. I maintained my fitness, applied moisturizer each night, followed all the advice from the magazines. Yet, something essential was absent. Not attractiveness, precisely, nor affection, but the sensation of truly being noticed. The notion surfaced rapidly, illogical and clear. Invite the son. His son, my stepson. He had turned up the previous week, in between consulting assignments, occupying the guest quarters like a well-mannered, unfamiliar person. He shared his father's facial structure, though lacked his rigidity. He had a slower gait, spoke infrequently, but when his eyes met yours, you felt genuinely perceived. The instant I voiced the suggestion, my husband arched an eyebrow but remained silent. I reasoned it might benefit him as well, I appended. He hasn't had a real rest in ages. He merely shrugged. If that is your preference. The journey there was lengthy and unremarkable. Conversation was sparse. He spent most of the drive gazing out the window, while I fiddled with the climate control 3 times just to break the quiet. At the reception counter, the attendant presumed we were partners. I swiftly corrected her misconception. He uttered nothing. That evening, following our massages, I entered our suite to discover him perched on the sofa's armrest, scrolling on his phone. His hair was moist from the steam facility. He glanced up as I came in. I remained clad in my spa robe, loosely fastened, the skin on my upper chest tingling from the cool air encountered outside. "Are you all right?" he inquired. "Perfectly fine," I fibbed. He rose and moved past me towards his own room, the edge of his towel grazing his legs. I observed his departure. My breathing had become shallow, and I disliked acknowledging this awareness. Later, we both lay conscious in our separate beds, with only a wall dividing us. I could detect the sound of him turning the pages of a novel. Closing my eyes, I conjured the rhythm of his breathing. My own physique reacted traitorously, warmth blooming where emptiness should have been. I drew the duvet up close to my chin and lay motionless, feeling ashamed of no specific thing, yet simultaneously of everything. The following morning, he tapped gently on my door. I delayed my response. His voice came, subdued. "They are serving breakfast near the pool. I will wait downstairs." His receding footsteps faded. I unfastened my suitcase deliberately, my fingers brushing against lace. I hadn't intended to include that particular set. Or perhaps, subconsciously, I had. The poolside area was almost deserted when I arrived. An elderly couple whispered intimately over tea, and the faint sound of silverware emanated from behind a cluster of lemon trees. He occupied a seat at the terrace's far end, one leg draped over the other, holding a glass of orange juice, sunglasses positioned on his nose like protective gear. "You are tardy," he remarked, without shifting his gaze upward. I seated myself opposite him and reached for the coffee container. The sun, already high, reflected off the silver cutlery, warming my exposed shoulders. I had chosen a linen dress featuring a low-cut back, worn without a bra. Practical for the warmth, I rationalized, yet I noticed his glance dip downwards, and my stomach clenched in that familiar, perplexing manner. We exchanged pleasantries regarding the meal, the sea, the pervasive tranquility. However, an altered quality existed within the pauses of our conversation, akin to music playing just below the threshold of hearing. I caught myself observing his mouth as he drank. He traced the rim of his glass with a finger, seemingly lost in thought, and I felt an illogical urge to inquire about his musings. Following breakfast, we strolled towards the shoreline. The sand felt fine, not excessively warm yet. I removed my sandals, carrying them in one hand. He mirrored the action. We proceeded without words. Conversation felt unnecessary. We simply walked, our shoulders occasionally making contact, not deliberately, yet not entirely by chance either. Where the beach curved, tall pine trees leaned towards a deteriorating stone barrier. I stopped there, feigning an adjustment to my dress strap, and he pivoted to look at me. The breeze swept a wisp of my hair across my face. He reached out unprompted and gently tucked it behind my ear. "You seem altered here," he murmured. "Altered? In what way?" "I am unsure." "Gentler, possibly, or perhaps merely less guarded." I offered no reply. His hand lingered near my face, not making contact, just hovering. My breath caught. "I ought not to express such things," he added, retreating slightly. "You expressed nothing improper." But he had, not through his words, but their delivery. And I had reacted. Not verbally, but through the tilt of my head, my failure to step away. The moment elongated, then fractured. I initiated the movement, leaning forward before rational thought or calculation could intervene. Our lips touched, not profoundly, not with hunger, but fractionally. Just sufficiently to sear. He did not withdraw. My hands remained by my sides. His stayed motionless. It endured for mere seconds, perhaps fewer. Yet, when I drew back, the entire beach felt transformed, as if enchanted. "I apologize," I breathed. He blinked. "Do you?" "I am uncertain." We refrained from speaking for the remainder of the walk back. The quietness wasn't frigid, but nor was it easy. It was novel, charged with tension. Inside the elevator, I observed my reflection alongside his. My appearance was composed, controlled. Yet beneath the dress, my skin vibrated with an energy I couldn't suppress. Upon reaching my room, I secured the lock behind me. Not out of concern for safety, but to regain my composure. I shed no tears. I did not smile. I simply stood immobile, thoughts consumed solely by the faint taste of salt and orange on his lips, and the intense desire to kiss him once more. We returned home in silence. The car radio played softly, tuned to a station neither had selected. His focus was on the road. Mine was on him, the profile of his face, the line of his neck, the slight flexing of his hand on the steering wheel each time we slowed for traffic lights. My pulse hammered in areas that had felt dormant for years. I considered speaking, addressing the incident, but how? "Forgive me for kissing you. I believe I wish to kiss you again in the car park, and in the elevator, and whilst you held the vehicle door for me." No phrasing existed for this that wouldn't disintegrate upon utterance. Back home, the established routine of the household enveloped us. My husband had returned. Calls awaited response, emails required attention, frozen soup needed thawing. He kissed my cheek as a greeting, inquiring if I had enjoyed myself. I affirmed that I had. He didn't probe further. Later that evening, standing in the walk-in wardrobe, I emptied clothes from the suitcase. The lace ensemble lay at the bottom, black, with delicate straps. I held it in my grasp longer than warranted, the material snagging on a ring I hadn't worn for weeks. I detected a knock. Not forceful, more like fingertips brushing against the wood. I assumed you were downstairs, I uttered, surprised. I was searching for the power cable. My phone battery is depleted. His voice sounded indistinct through the door. I thought you might possess one in here. I acted without forethought. I was still clad in the lace. My heart leaped. I opened the door. He blinked once, a slow, intentional motion. His gaze didn't roam over my form. It remained fixed on mine. Then descended fractionally to the strap that had slid from my shoulder. I will return later, he stated softly. I gave no reply. My breath halted somewhere within my chest. I retreated just enough for him to glimpse the mirror positioned behind me. My reflected image, his eyes darted towards it. You need not go, I said. It marked the evening's first untruth. Or potentially the second. He lingered at the entrance, one hand resting on the doorframe. And briefly, just for a moment, I believed he might enter. But he refrained. He nodded, turned, and departed. I remained there, motionless. My skin felt flushed. My thoughts were a chaotic mix of disgrace and desire, of yearning for control and simultaneously wishing to relinquish it completely. Later, during dinner, we sat opposite one another. My husband discussed a new venture. The stepson nodded, posed inquiries, maintained a light demeanor. He possessed skill in that regard. I felt envious. Beneath the table, my hand quivered on my napkin. I felt akin to a glass placed precariously close to the edge, a single nudge from shattering, yet no one present seemed aware. As I served dessert, I intercepted his gaze upon me. Not my face, my wrists, my neck, the indentation at my collarbone where the robe had gaped open 2 nights prior. Sleep eluded me that night. Every sound within the house resonated through my being. At 2:11 a.m., I padded barefoot down to the kitchen. The cold floor tiles slightly roused me. I opened the refrigerator, took a sip of water, and leaned against the counter. He entered 5 minutes afterwards. We exchanged no words. I offered no justification for my presence there. Nor did he. He opened a cupboard, poured cereal into a container, took a seat at the table, and I observed his back. That was the extent of it, yet it felt overwhelming. I discovered the roses on the kitchen counter the subsequent morning. Long-stemmed, white, freshly arranged. A small card nestled among the petals simply read, "Just because." My husband entered, drying his hands on a towel, still dressed in his morning shirt. "You have appeared withdrawn recently." I decided to remedy that, he remarked, devoid of irony. "Dinner this evening?" "Only the 2 of us." I smiled reflexively. "That sounds lovely." He kissed my cheek and departed to answer a phone call. His timing consistently proved opportune. Grand gestures precisely when the distance between us expanded. I once believed it signified his intuitiveness. Lately, it felt more akin to calculation. I occupied the day cleaning a house that required no cleaning. My hands moved across surfaces from sheer habit. Polishing, folding, wiping, arranging. I avoided looking in mirrors. The lace attire from the previous night remained crumpled in the laundry hamper, undisturbed. At 5 o'clock, he returned home ahead of schedule. "No necessity to dress excessively," he stated. "Somewhere tranquil. Candlelight, wine, you and I." I showered and then sat on the bed's edge wrapped in a towel for an extended period. My damp hair dripped onto my thighs. I stared into the open wardrobe, my eyes scanning hangers unfocused. Everything appeared identical. Too much, too little. Not truly mine. Ultimately, I selected the black dress he had once commented reminded him of our first meeting. I had worn it to a corporate dinner 6 years prior, back when he still regarded me as if I were fragile, coveted, before I became merely part of his Sunday routine. We drove mostly in silence. He tapped his fingers rhythmically on the steering wheel, humming indistinctly. I observed the lights streaking past the windscreen and contemplated cereal, cold tiles, and the sound of breathing that wasn't his. The restaurant was sparsely occupied. A man played a saxophone near the bar area. Our table featured a single candle, its flame dancing between us. He spoke about the most recent property transaction, his proposal to lease the lake house, potentially renovating the deck. I nodded periodically, replying when expected. I could perceive the candle's heat on my knuckles, but not any warmth between us. Midway through the main dish, he extended his hand across the table and clasped mine. "You have seemed elsewhere lately." I blinked. "What do you signify?" "You are more reserved, preoccupied." "I am uncertain. I simply feel as though I am losing you to something undefinable." For an instant, my throat constricted. An involuntary sorrow surged, unbidden, oppressive. Yet I compelled a gentle smile and squeezed his hand. "I am present." He smiled back, visibly relieved. The waiter delivered dessert. He requested champagne. During the drive home, he placed a hand on my thigh. Familiar, claiming, lacking passion. I didn't recoil, but neither did I register the sensation. Merely pressure through the material. That night, he fell asleep swiftly beside me. I remained awake, listening to the consistent cadence of his breathing. The room was dusky, silent. My heart was not. Around midnight, I arose and padded into the corridor, moving silently on bare feet. The guest room door stood slightly open. A sliver of lamplight spilled onto the floorboards. I knocked softly. He looked up from a book, the same one he had taken to the spa. He remained silent. "I couldn't sleep," I whispered. He sat motionless, his gaze fixed on mine. "Do you wish to enter?" I paused. "No," I eventually replied. "I merely wish to see you." He nodded once. The quiet between us expanded once more, not delicate, but substantial. As I turned to depart, his voice halted me. "Are you content?" I offered no response. I returned to the bedroom and lay down beside the man I had married, contemplating a voice that posed questions no one else dared to. Sleep remained elusive. The following morning, I fabricated an excuse. The garden center downtown received a new delivery of olive trees, I informed my husband over coffee. "I want to visit today before they are all taken." He didn't lift his gaze from his tablet. "Take the car. Better yet, take him along. He possesses greater knowledge of plants than I do." I nodded, cautious not to show excessive eagerness. "Certainly." An hour later, we were traveling on the freeway. I wore a soft cotton dress that adhered awkwardly when I sat, and I found I didn't mind. The window was lowered just sufficiently for the wind to tousle my hair. He glanced towards me once at a traffic light and said nothing, but I observed his knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. We didn't converse until reaching the midpoint of our journey. "You arranged this," he stated. I didn't refute it. I needed to leave the house. He glanced at me again, his gaze lingering this time. "You didn't require trees for that purpose." The garden center was nearly vacant. The aroma of earth filled the air, mingling with sun-heated plastic, rosemary, and ceramic containers. We meandered through the rose section without speaking, touching foliage we had no intention of purchasing. In the covered area, I leaned over a display of ceramic planters. He moved beside me. Too near. His hand brushed against mine. "Not accidentally." "Let us refrain from this," he murmured softly. "Then cease," I countered. His breath caught almost imperceptibly. I avoided looking at him. My heart pounded in my throat. My fingers quivered as they traced the curved edge of a pot. I do not wish to exercise caution with you, I whispered. He released his breath, and I felt it against my neck. That simple, warm exhalation. My skin reacted as if electrified. The cashier processed our non-existent purchase without noticing anything amiss. We walked back towards the car resembling strangers. However, in the parking area behind the structure, near the waste bins where observation was unlikely, I turned. I kissed him. This instance lacked softness. It lacked hesitation. It was urgent, rapid, like something illicit and consuming. My hands clutched his shirt. His arms enveloped me as if restraining a tempest. We uttered no words. The chirp of a nearby bird. The faint drone of traffic. None of it registered. Only his mouth, his breath, the manner his hand slid around the nape of my neck, holding me there as though he couldn't bear to release me. We separated only upon hearing footsteps echoing across the parking lot. Back inside the car, we remained silent. I could still perceive his taste on my lips. My entire being throbbed, attuned solely to him. Halfway home, I reached across the central console and touched his wrist. He didn't withdraw. Let's not return just yet, I proposed. He looked at me searchingly. Where would we venture? Anywhere. He steered off the main highway without further comment. We found ourselves by the cliffs near a stretch of beach I hadn't visited in years. Devoid of tourists, only rugged stones, a pale sky, and the crash of waves. We sat on the car's hood in silence. I didn't intend for this outcome, I admitted. I am aware. But I do not wish to cease. He looked downwards, then met my gaze again. His voice was even, yet low. Neither do I. The wind tugged at my dress. His hand located mine where it rested on my thigh. This time, guilt was absent. Not yet. I felt intensely alive. And that sensation, more than any other, filled me with terror. He maintained his distance over the ensuing days. Not in a physical sense. He remained within the house, present at dinner, maneuvering around the same rooms I traversed barefoot in the mornings. Yet, something within him had shifted. A reserve marked his movements now, a reluctance not previously apparent. I first perceived it upon coming downstairs one morning to find him already in the kitchen, pouring coffee. He didn't turn upon my entrance. He simply inquired, "Desire some?" without looking directly at me. "Yes," I replied. "Thank you." The mug felt warm in my hands, but his fingers made no contact with mine as he passed it over. That lack of touch resonated more profoundly than any argument could have. My husband joined us, discussing weekend arrangements, the possibility of inviting friends over, the grill needing maintenance. I nodded appropriately. He remained, as ever, unaware of the tension permeating the atmosphere. Later, I perched on the edge of our bed and gazed towards the closet. I retrieved the identical robe worn at the spa, held it briefly, then let it fall. Instead, I slipped into a silk camisole, ivory, delicate straps, almost imperceptible. The type that clings to the skin with the gentle weight of a hidden thing. I convinced myself it was for my husband. He entered half an hour later. Glanced my way, smiled. "That appears attractive." I returned the smile. "Thanks." He changed clothes, brushed his teeth, got into bed. He kissed my shoulder before extinguishing the light. A polite gesture, habitual. He turned his back towards me. Minutes elapsed. His breathing grew deeper. I lay motionless. I didn't desire his touch, yet I despised feeling so untouched. The following morning, I discovered a note pushed beneath my door. Merely a fragment torn from a notepad. For words, "You resembled fire." No name, no signature. None was needed. I kept that note tucked inside my bra throughout the day. That afternoon, my husband departed for his office. Meetings, he explained. Would return late. I hadn't formulated any plan. I simply found myself walking towards the guest room. My fingers rested on the doorknob, pausing, attentive. He opened the door before I could knock. You ought not to be here, he stated. I am aware. But I didn't retreat. I stepped inside instead. He didn't touch me. Not immediately. He just remained there, back leaned against the wall, his eyes inscrutable. The space separating us felt sharp, like a razor's edge. I have been attempting to maintain distance, he uttered quietly. Why? Because I am not permitted to desire you. Do you imagine I am ignorant of that? The silence saturated every fissure within the room. He took a single step forward. Just one. I cannot provide what you require, he said. You already do. His composure wavered. His jaw clenched. I don't know how to exist near you without wanting to dismantle you. I should have pivoted. I should have exited. But I remained. Simply stood there, bare feet upon the hardwood floor, skin humming beneath the silk, allowing his words to permeate me like rainfall into dry earth. We made no physical contact, yet the gap between us shrank to a mere breath, and it proved sufficient to unravel me. That night, I lay beside my husband once more. He spoke of finances, a newly recommended wine, a friend who had purchased a boat. I responded, smiled, nodded. But my body recalled different hands, different words, a fervor that required no touch to inflict marks. And somewhere profound within my chest, an ache for more began to grow. The video footage lasted only 15 seconds. I stumbled upon it inadvertently. Or so I told myself. I was organizing files on our shared household computer, relocating photographs between folders. The small preview image captured my attention. A static shot of the beach, cliffs visible in the distance, golden sunlight reflecting off the water. For a moment, recognition failed me. Then I recalled that specific day. That unplanned diversion, that quietude. After the second kiss. I clicked to view it. There we were. Standing barefoot on the rocks, my dress fluttering slightly in the breeze. He stood beside me, slightly behind, his hand extending towards mine. We weren't speaking. We weren't kissing. But the distance between us had vanished. The expression with which I regarded him, soft, unguarded, almost smiling, conveyed too much, conveyed everything. And the most painful aspect, he hadn't recorded it. He was unaware of its existence. The security camera of a nearby rental property must have captured the moment. My husband must have retrieved it. The video file resided within a folder designated Contracts 2021. That night, breathing felt constricted within our bedroom. He made no reference to the file, not a single word. Yet his demeanor had altered in the most minute, subtle ways, reduced eye contact, fewer inquiries, extended silences following my speech. Nothing overt enough to challenge, nothing easily explained. Just an absence, like a gradual seepage in the foundations. I inquired if he felt weary. He affirmed. I asked if everything was satisfactory. He nodded. I went down to the kitchen around midnight, sleep proving impossible. The floor felt cold beneath my soles. I didn't switch on the lights. I sat at the table, tracing condensation patterns on a water glass with my finger, meaningless forms, circles, spirals, injuries. I heard footsteps. I didn't turn. You viewed it, I stated. Silence followed. Then, yes. I turned around. He stood in the doorway, barefoot, without a shirt, his eyes obscured. How long? He inquired. I didn't reply. He moved nearer. You wore the white dress. I nodded. I watched it 3 times, he revealed. You appeared content. I rose slowly, the ache in my chest intensifying. Are you angered? No, he said. I am undone. He reached towards me abruptly, yet not to touch, merely to stand close. The air between us pulsed, filled with unspoken sentiments, heavy and potent. I cannot cease, I whispered. His voice cracked. I do not wish you to. I closed my eyes. I felt the warmth emanating from his body and the chill residing within my own. How did we arrive here, uttering such things? What had I transformed into? And why did it feel akin to blossoming rather than shattering? He brushed a stray hair from my cheek. Not tenderly, not possessively, just truthfully. I believe I have forfeited the privilege to ask this, he stated. But what transpires now? I stepped back, though not significantly. Just enough to draw breath. I am uncertain. But I can no longer feign. He nodded slowly. Then do not. I walked past him, exiting the kitchen, ascending the stairs. I didn't glance back, but I heard his breath catch behind me, as if something precious had just been granted permission to plummet. And in that instant, I comprehended. We had traversed a boundary from which return was impossible. He commenced packing his belongings that very week. Not hastily, not with theatrics. No drawers slammed, no voices elevated, just methodical movements. Shirts folded meticulously, a charging cable coiled neatly, a book retrieved from the bedside table and placed within his travel bag. Each action possessed a sort of control that amplified the pain, as though he had already reconciled with something I still struggled to refute. I observed from the hallway, fingers gripping the doorframe. You are not obliged to depart, I offered. He didn't look up. I am. On account of him? He paused, the material of his sweater taut between his hands. No. On account of us. We stood in silence. A bird chirped outside the window, its sound too cheerful for the circumstances. I resented the apparent beauty of everything. The morning light, the immaculate floorboards, the crisp linens on the bed. It all registered as a form of betrayal. I harbor no regrets, I stated. He finally met my gaze. That is what renders it more difficult. He fastened his bag, not completely, leaving it slightly ajar, as if a part of him resisted full departure. Or perhaps he wished to avoid hearing the finality of its closure. I entered the room. Where will you reside? He shrugged. Return to the city. A temporary arrangement. I will manage. You could remain, I suggested. He need not be aware of everything. He offered a smile, though it appeared weary. He is already aware of enough. I sat upon the bed's edge, knees unsteady. Last night, I started. You stated you no longer wished me to pretend. I meant it. Then what constitutes this? He sat beside me, maintaining distance. The bed frame groaned beneath our combined weight. My hand rested between us, palm upwards. He didn't take it. This, he clarified, is my withdrawal before I inflict irreparable damage. I turned towards him, tears welling, not from culpability, but from loss, a potential future glimpsed and now denied. Do you love me? I inquired. He averted his gaze. I wish to. That fails to answer. It is the sole answer I possess. The front door clicked shut behind him an hour later. I didn't pursue him. I stood at the kitchen window, observing the taillights fade into the distance, flashing once as he rounded the corner. Then, emptiness. That evening, my husband sat opposite me during dinner. He served himself with courtesy, inquired about my day, related a story about a friend acquiring a cabin in Vermont. I nodded, chewed, swallowed. He made no mention of the video, nor the distance, nor the vacant room down the hall. Yet I perceived it in his eyes, the gradual disintegration of a man already informed, who required no admission to feel deceived. We occupied the same bed. Our backs turned towards each other, the expanse between us sufficient for another body. In the darkness, I reached towards the space he formerly occupied. It felt cold now. I pressed my palm flat against the sheet and whispered to the void, "Return." But only silence responded, indifferent. Weeks elapsed. The house sustained a quietness distinct from peace. The sort of silence that accumulates in corners like fine dust, unseen, yet stifling. My husband and I navigated around each other like disembodied sounds, conversing when required, laughing when anticipated, touching solely through accidental contact. He posed no questions, and I ceased providing explanations. I convinced myself this approach was preferable, tidier, that the hurt was managed like a sutured injury. However, each time I passed the guest room, his room, I experienced a constriction in my chest, something unresolved and acrid. One afternoon, I found myself driving without destination. The freeway unrolled in long, gray stretches, familiar exit markers flashing past. I remained unaware of my trajectory until the ocean came into view. That specific beach, that cliff face, the point of origin, not initiated by the kiss, but within the interval separating us. In the manner we stood excessively close and failed to move apart. I parked the car, exited barefoot. The sand felt moist from the receding tide, cool against my soles. The sun hung low, casting a gentle golden light, imbuing everything with an almost staged poignancy. I walked towards the rocks, the ones etched in memory, the ones featured in the video. I carried the envelope in my handbag. I couldn't articulate why I had brought it. I hadn't examined its contents for days. Seating myself on the rocks, I retrieved it. Inside lay a solitary photograph, a print, glossy, slightly creased at the corners. He must have captured it unbeknownst to me, likely during one of our beach excursions. I was captured mid-stride, the hem of my dress lifted by the breeze, my face averted, engrossed in laughter or contemplation, I couldn't recall which. Yet the expression conveyed by my body, my bearing, my motion, was unequivocal. I appeared vibrant. Not immaculate, not flawless, merely authentic. I traced the bottom edge with my thumb. The ink showed slight smudging in one corner. No inscription adorned the reverse side, only the quietude of incompletion. Upon returning home, I inserted the photograph into a book resting on my bedside table. Concealed between pages, it reverted to secrecy. That evening, my husband poured wine, inquiring if I wished to visit his sister's residence upstate. "The lake is pleasant this season," he remarked. I responded, "Perhaps." He nodded, took a sip, refrained from insisting. Later, I stood before the mirror clad in my robe. My physical form appeared unchanged, yet it was not. It had experienced different contact. It retained certain memories while discarding others. I reached towards the drawer containing the lace ensemble, the black one. I held it momentarily, then shut the drawer once more. I extinguished the lights, slid into bed, closed my eyes, and still I sensed his presence beside me. Not physically, but in warmth, in recollection. In the finality lacking in our parting. Not truly.